The man who thought he had lost his mind suddenly recognized the one person he desperately wanted to leave behind. I am a woman in my 70s, and my life has been a relentless cycle of loss and hardship. I've had to bury my husband and my son, leaving me with only my daughter and my cherished son-in-law to hold on to. For decades, I lived by one principle: to raise my children well, yet, the outcome was bitterly uneven. My son, Danny, was an emotional and financial drain. He was a creature of constant demands and grievances, always comparing our modest life to wealthier families. Why are we so poor, Mom? If I were born rich, I wouldn't have to beg you for money all the time. I disciplined him, even resorted to physical punishment when he was a grown man, but nothing changed. After college, he briefly held a job. Before falling victim to a crippling business bug, he would open a clothing store, fail, try a restaurant, and fail again. The problem wasn't his ambition, it was his utter lack of capability, coupled with his willingness to constantly extort money from us. Not this time. This isn't a bottomless pit, Danny. Your father and I are not ATMs. Give up this CEO nonsense and get a decent job. When will you finally grow up? Despite our pleas, he remained obstinate. After a few initial, regrettable loans, we cut him off. He responded by refusing to visit the house unless he needed something. In stark contrast was my daughter, Sarah. She was sharp and responsible from a young age. Though she wasn't a stellar student, she had an immense heart. She started part-time jobs in high school, saving meticulously, not just for herself but sometimes even offering us money. I'm so grateful for everything you've given me, Mom and Dad, and I don't understand why Opa Danny keeps demanding things when he hasn't done anything to repay you. She became the sole reason for my husband's and my happiness. When Sarah decided to marry, I regretted not being able to support her properly. We scraped together $20 million, about $15,000 from our retirement fund, a painful sacrifice, but I wished I could have sold my own body to give her more. Sarah and her fiancé, Kevin, were humble but hardworking. Kevin was a city bus driver, 2 years older than Sarah, who worked at a small factory. They were a thrifty couple and managed to secure a small apartment lease in Seoul. With their combined savings and our help, Kevin was an absolute delight. He was a large man with a gentle face, and when he smiled, he looked utterly harmless. He had lost his mother to illness at 17 and his father at 28, leaving him an orphan with no siblings. He told me that Sarah was his savior, his closest friend, and his entire family. I begged Yo-Yun Sarah to marry me quickly because I can't imagine living without her, he confessed. He was so vulnerable that my motherly instincts kicked in immediately. Kevin, do you like Bossum steamed pork? I'll cook plenty for dinner. You look too thin, my boy, you need to gain weight. He admitted that after losing his mother, he neglected food, and after his father died, he felt a strange guilt about living, which made him lose his appetite entirely. I devoted myself to feeding him, determined to fatten him up. He would always laugh and say, "Mother-in-law, you're the best." Seeing such a sweet, appreciative man after dealing with my greedy son, filled my heart with affection. The shadow of Danny, however, never truly left. Even after Sarah's wedding, he continued his failed ventures. Once, during a holiday visit, I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. Danny was begging Kevin, "Brother-in-law, could you lend me 10 million more? My business is in trouble, and that's all I need to pull through." I discovered that Danny had already borrowed an astonishing 40 million, about $30,000 from Kevin, none of which had been repaid. I exploded in anger and threw Danny out. But Kevin, being the kind soul he was, simply said, "He must have his reasons, Mother. It's family money. I lent it knowing I might not get it back, to avoid bad feelings. You know how much this family means to me." It was an act of grace that cemented my deep love for him. 3 years into their marriage, tragedy struck. My husband suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage. Sarah and Kevin immediately took charge, refusing to let me nurse him alone. "Mom, Dad is my father, too. I can't leave you alone to handle his care at your age. We'll take turns." Kevin was tireless in his devotion. He was better to my husband than my own son, Danny, who only visited the hospital briefly, visibly calculating whether this new burden would fall upon him. After 6 grueling months, my husband suffered a second hemorrhage and passed away. My grief was absolute. I screamed and cried until I couldn't breathe, and it was Kevin and Sarah who held me up. Yet, even at the funeral, the despicable Danny appeared, not to mourn, but to demand, "Mother, Father had life insurance, right? You didn't give me the payout when he fell ill. You must divide the death benefit now. I slapped him with all the strength I had left. Get out. You are not my son. How dare you talk about money here? Danny quickly retreated, ashamed by the surrounding crowd.
The remaining family carried on, but not for long. Sarah and Kevin had been struggling to conceive, undergoing several rounds of treatments, and finally, after much heartache, they were pregnant. They came to me, ultrasound in hand, tears of joy streaming down their faces. To prepare, they decided to move from their small apartment to a more spacious 3-bedroom unit. They had saved diligently and were proud to have found a large apartment for a new lease. But on the day of the move, Sarah called me, her voice ragged with terror. "Mother, we've been scammed. We paid the full lease deposit. We came to the new place, but the code doesn't work, and someone else is living here." They had become victims of a sophisticated fraudulent lease deposit scam, losing every penny they had saved their entire life's assets. The landlord was unreachable. The supposed real estate agent's office was empty, and worse, a title check revealed the apartment was already heavily mortgaged with multiple liens, and the registered owner was a derelict. They couldn't recover a single cent. They had lost their home and their financial foundation overnight. They moved into my small apartment. Utterly shattered. The shock and devastation were too much for Sarah. Despite being 8 months pregnant, she became severely depressed, refusing to eat. I pleaded, "Sarah, please. You'll harm yourself and the baby. For the baby's sake, you have to eat." She would try to swallow food, only to immediately throw up. The guilt of losing their future and their child's security consumed her. At 8 months, the inevitable, horrifying news came. She suffered a stillbirth. The physical pain of delivering a lifeless, full-term child, compounded by emotional trauma, plunged her into a suicidal depression. "It's all my fault, Mom. I sent our baby away because I couldn't even take care of myself. I should have been the one to die, not the child." 1 week later, the unbelievable horror became my reality. My beloved daughter Sarah took her own life. Her suicide note expressed overwhelming apologies to me and Kevin, and an unbearable guilt toward the child she felt she had failed. I was left screaming into the void, convinced this cruel world was punishing us unjustly. Then, at Sarah's funeral, the monster, Danny, showed up again. He cornered Kevin and asked, "Does Sarah have any life insurance? Since there are no children, we should split the money between you and our family, right?" That was the last straw. I slapped Danny across the face so hard my hand stung, driving him out and telling him he was no longer my son. The grief devoured Kevin. A week after the funeral, he was gone. He left a chilling, brief text. "Please take care of yourself, Mother. I'm sorry for being a bad son-in-law." My heart pounded with terror. I reported his disappearance, but the police couldn't find him. I sent him daily texts, clinging to the hope he was alive. "Kevin, Sarah will protect you from heaven. Don't do anything foolish. Please contact me. I miss you." There was never a reply. His phone was eventually disconnected. I searched for him for 9 agonizing months, barely sleeping, barely functioning, convinced he had followed my daughter. Then, 9 months later, my sister called, her voice shaking. "Sister, I think I saw your son-in-law." He was sleeping rough near the subway station. I rushed to the spot. After hours of searching, I saw him shuffling along. He was unrecognizable. Long, matted hair, a thick, filthy beard, and a smell that suggested weeks on the street. He was wearing a thin coat in the biting cold. He looked like a textbook homeless man. "Kevin, it's me. Don't you recognize me?" He stared blankly, then walked past. I desperately grabbed his arm. "Kevin, please. Why are you doing this?" He slumped against a wall, clutching an empty bottle of cheap liquor. A nearby homeless man spoke up. "Are you this man's mother-in-law?" He lost his mind, he did. I thought he was mute until I heard him screaming, "Sarah! Sarah!" in the middle of the night. He cries that name all the time. The shame and the pity hearing a stranger speak, my daughter's name in connection with Kevin's utter ruin, broke me entirely. I dragged him into a hug, weeping hysterically, pulling him to my chest as he kept muttering her name. With the help of paramedics, I brought Kevin home, washed him, and took him to a psychiatric hospital. The diagnosis was devastating: severe post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, that had spiraled into a psychotic state, dissociative disorder, and major depressive disorder. The doctor stressed that the sustained shock had caused his mind to completely break down. I admitted him to a specialized facility, visiting constantly. I often sat there holding his hand, pleading, "You are not a burden. You are saving me, Kevin. If you leave, I have nothing left. Please stay and fight for me." After 5 months of intensive therapy and medication, the darkness began to recede. One day, he looked at me with clarity and said, "Mother dash and dash law ... I'm so sorry for all the trouble I've caused." I felt overwhelming relief and gratitude. I knew the spirits of my husband, Sarah, and Kevin's own parents had intervened. 5 months after his second admission, Kevin was finally well enough to come home. He continued to struggle with immense guilt, constantly looking at Sarah's photo and blaming himself for the scam. "It's all my fault, Mother. If I hadn't insisted on that specific expensive house, Sarah and our baby would still be here. I destroyed them." I tried to console him, but my words seemed to fall short. Then, one evening, I came home from my part-time restaurant job to an astonishing sight. Kevin had prepared a lavish, full-course meal. "What is all this?" I asked, completely taken aback. "I felt I owe you so much, Mother," he said, gently pulling out my chair. "I wanted to finally treat you. Please sit." The food was delicious, but the sight of him trying to live again was 100 times sweeter than any meal. As I ate, tears welled up. He looked at me, his eyes oddly empty despite the smile. "Thank you for everything, Mother. Do you remember when I first moved in? You were so worried about me being thin." We shared a brief, bittersweet memory of Sarah and my late husband. But as we talked, a chill ran through me. He didn't seem renewed. He seemed resigned, like a man who had already surrendered. He insisted on cleaning up alone, sending me to the bathroom to wash up and rest. "I want to take care of everything, Mother, just as you have taken care of me." Exhausted, I fell asleep around 10 p.m. I was jolted awake near midnight by a disturbing dream. Sarah was weeping inconsolably, shaking me but unable to speak. My heart was pounding. The strange feeling of resignation I'd sensed in Kevin, coupled with the dream, made me uneasy. I crept out to the hallway. The door to Sarah's old room, where Kevin now slept, was slightly ajar. I heard a faint rustling sound, followed by a muffled, desperate sob. My blood froze. I pushed the door open, and the sight sent me screaming to the floor. He was attempting to take his own life. The rustling was the sound of his final preparations. If Sarah's warning hadn't woken me, if I hadn't followed my instinct, I would have lost the last person I loved. I scrambled up, shaking him violently, shouting, "No! Stop! Don't you dare leave me!" I found his suicide note nearby, wet with tears. "I cannot live with the guilt, Mother. I am a broken man, and I will only be a burden to you. I am going to be with Sarah." He felt my love was a chain, and he needed to break free to find peace with my daughter. I called 911, clinging to his unconscious body until the ambulance arrived. At the hospital, the doctor reassured me. He was stable. I wept, thanking everyone, the doctors, the nurses, and every member of my family in heaven for stopping him. When he finally woke up, I poured out my heart, not in compassion, but in fury. "What were you thinking? You are the only family I have left. I nursed you back to health. I did everything. How could you be so irresponsible? If you leave, what will happen to me? Who will I have?" He sobbed, his head bowed. "I'm just a burden, Mother. I have a sickness. I can't let you keep sacrificing your life for me." I grabbed his arm desperately. "You are not a burden. You are keeping me alive. Danny, that monster, he is no longer my son. You are the only child I have. I will not survive losing you too. We must live for Sarah, to live the life she couldn't. Please promise me. Never do this again, or I will follow her myself." He finally nodded, tears streaming, promising he would try to live for me. Kevin was readmitted to the psychiatric hospital, this time by his own choice. He was determined to fight the depression for my sake. "I need to get truly healthy, Mother. I will work hard this time so I can come out and smile for you." For the next few months, I visited him often, bringing him things he loved and offering him gentle encouragement. "We all carry loneliness and sorrow, Kevin. It's okay to be sad, but don't try too hard. Just take it slow. I will be waiting for you." He cried whenever I spoke such words. Slowly, his face brightened. He started smiling and sharing small stories about his day. After a second period of intensive treatment, he was finally discharged.
The moment he arrived home, Kevin knelt and performed a deep, traditional bow. "Mother," he promised, "I was a dead man, and you brought me back to life. I will live the rest of my life as your son, protecting you and staying by your side." I cried, accepting him as my true son. He returned to work, fully recovered, becoming the most devoted son a mother could ask for. Then, 2 years ago, my biological son Danny reappeared, aggressive and desperate for money. I shouted, but Danny tried to physically overpower me. Kevin instantly stepped in, standing solid between us. "Enough, brother, you are not family." Danny scoffed. "You're not even family, why interfere?" Kevin stood his ground, his voice low and chilling. "I am mother's son. I am the one who protected her while you've only preyed on her. I will live as her son forever. Never threaten her again, Danny. If you do, I will not let you leave here unscathed." Danny fled, terrified, and has not returned since. Now, in my early 70s, Kevin and I live a peaceful, happy life. He constantly looks out for me. "Mother, I'm home. Your son will treat you." He insists I deserve the best. We support each other, laughing and crying together. The pain of loss remains, especially on Sarah's Memorial Day. Kevin confessed, "Mother, I still feel guilty about Sarah. To atone, I will take care of you for the rest of my life. I love you, and I need you to stay healthy." Though I suggested he remarry, he insisted, "Sarah is the only woman for me. We are two broken souls who found true family. To anyone suffering, cling to true love, and let it guide you back to the sun."